Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lion's Den and another episode in our Blue Collar Ballers series. Today we speak with Lane Matheson, the owner of Allied Fence of Tulsa. Now, it's not often we speak with many owners of construction trades firms who have such a varied background as Lane. This is a very interesting conversation. As you'll find out, she actually began her career working as an engineer on the space station program for NASA, then transitioned to being a high school teacher, and then transitioned to running a fence installation company. Very, very interesting path. You'll hear all about it. Spoiler alert, the reason she ended up shifting to running this fence company is because her father, it was his company, and he ended up leaving it to her and her sister without really setting them up for success. And so part of this conversation is about how do you handle that? Just being handed a company and having to take it over. So really, really cool conversation. Give it a listen. So Lane, I definitely want to dive into, the construction trade business that you run, but first I want to start with a little bit of your career history before that, because you've done some very cool stuff. So you worked on the space station program. Is that right?
That is correct. I worked for a subcontractor of NASA for 10 years. I've actually designed parts that are currently flying up in space, and it was an amazing experience.
Was that like something you always wanted to do growing up, was be involved? Like, were you one of the kids who wanted to be an astronaut, or how did you go down that path?
Yeah, yes, I absolutely was. So I got into Star Trek in my early teens with another group of geeks, and I wanted to be that astronaut. But I discovered, hey, you have to have really good eyesight, which I didn't, and I needed to find a different path. So I knew I wanted to work on a space program. I chose to go into mechanical engineering because it was pretty broad, but I picked a lot of specialized courses that helped me actually land that position as a systems engineer for McDonnell Douglas on the space station.
Wow, that's crazy. And so how long did you work in that field, NASA, space station type stuff?
It was about 10 years from start to finish. When I left, the design role was about done, and they were going into production, and there wasn't a whole lot new to tackle. And I just needed a break for a while. I really thought I was going to go back into engineering, and I ended up not doing that. So
Okay.
it was a choice to come back home to Tulsa from California.
Yeah. Do you still stay kind of like up to date on what's going on with different space station stuff? Like those astronauts were stuck there recently for like 9 months or whatever that was. Is this still like an interest of yours, a hobby of yours?
I definitely pay attention to all those stories. I find them very interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It it I I know that there's some new programs being developed, but they're slow moving. They haven't moved out of the introductory stages yet, and I'm anxious to see what comes next.
Well, Katy Perry went to space recently, so I'm sure you're more qualified than her. So maybe that childhood dream will come true.
Maybe.
Um, okay, so after that, you shifted and started to do some work in robotics. Is that right?
Well, it was actually in teaching, and so I started teaching high school because there were a lot of articles coming out about how girls were not doing well in math compared to boys, and I
Hmm.
was like, that's ridiculous. I can do something about that while I'm waiting for my next position as an engineer.
Yeah.
So my idea was I'd go teach math for 5 years. Well, in that 5 years, I came up with the idea of offering engineering exposure courses to high school students to see if I could get them interested to go along with the math classes that I was teaching. And it took off. I actually met my husband while teaching and invited him to help me start a robotics team. And the kids just loved it, and it grew our program dramatically. We ended up forming a full-fledged pre-engineering uh, program within our high school. We remodeled the entire athletic facility. They moved out to a new facility. We remodeled it into our robotics lab, and we built a really strong robotics team. We had the top team for many years in our state, most decorated program, and it really inspired a lot of kids. Not all of them went into engineering. My husband's expertise was in the life sciences. A lot of them went into medicine, and other kids went into business, but they got so many wonderful real life experiences going through our program. And it left us with a lot of really close relationships with kids that we taught, including one who became our honorary daughter, and her 4 kids became our honorary grandkids. So
awesome. What kind of robotic stuff were you guys doing? I don't know anything about that program. What were you building?
So we started out with Best Robotics, where you were given a cardboard box full of materials and you had to make something that would run with a remote control. And it was very challenging because everything had to be built from scratch. But it taught the kids a lot about tools and safety practices and stuff. And then we discovered First Robotics, which is a step up. You can buy a lot of the materials. You can still make a lot of it. And a lot of programs had full-on fabrication programs that they could make things. We weren't quite in that league, but those robots could be up to 5 feet tall, 130 pounds. They were big. You played 3 versus 3. So you got rotated in with 2 other robotics teams every match. And you played against 3 other teams that you really didn't know them. You had to come up with your strategy on the fly. And so I became the coach behind the scenes. You had 4 kids out on the field or with you. 2 of them were driving, and 2 were like human players. And they just handled different things, different parts of the robot, different aspects of the game. And so I was back behind them going, do this, do that, big eyes on the field. Was I great at it? No, but it was so much fun. And we won robotics a lot of times. Then there were other awards that were considered the top awards. The Chairman's Award, we won many, many times for all of our work out in the community, getting other kids involved. And we did a lot of summer camps for younger kids. We ran our own competitions for younger kids, things like that. So very lot going on.
And I think you mentioned you were okay at coaching, but didn't you win an award for being the top coach?
So I was okay at coaching on the field, I felt like, but coaching the kids out in the community and doing all the things that help them build their speaking skills, their interactions with people. We had a program where they dressed up once a week as professionals. And during the school day, they discovered people treated them differently when they were dressed up in suits and ties, and girls wearing high heels and proper earrings and all of that. So we just did a lot of things that really made our team stand out. And for that reason, and all the teams that we grew out of our program in other schools at other levels, I was awarded first a local robotics coach of the year, and then eventually selected as the world champion robotics coach of the year.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. So, all right. So you have this really cool background in space, robotics, all these very high tech engineering type things. And then all of a sudden you're running a fence installation company. So what happened there? How did that happen?
Okay. So the fence installation company has been in my family since I was about 10. My dad had been running it, and the corporation that owned it decided to sell off their local branches. My dad bought the one here in Tulsa. And so I basically, growing up, I didn't know any different. It was just always in our family, right? And I did work there one summer before I went to college. And, I was kind of a secretary / gopher. I had a little desk in the corner. I can't say I learned a whole lot about the business. Yeah. My dad and I talked about it occasionally after I got older, but we never really had conversations about it. And unfortunately, he became ill and passed away without any conversations with me or my sister. His will left the business to the 2 of us, split evenly. There were some shares left to his president as well. So the president ran it, but my sister and I never got any instruction on the business, and we honestly didn't have a clue. For quite a few years, we let other people run it. We became aware of some issues. We shifted course. There were more issues, and finally in 2019, it became necessary for me to take over because the business was non-functional.
And when did you say your dad left it to you? What year?
In 2002. So for
Okay, so this was
17 years, we trusted in others. We kept finding issues. We kept trying to make it work because I had my career as a teacher. My sister had her kids. She was trying to get her career off the ground as a speech pathologist. And at some point you go, okay, this isn't working. We got to figure it out. And at the point I took over, the doors were shut, and it was either let go in and restart it or let it die. And honestly, I was too much of a daddy's girl at the time. My reasoning for not wanting to let it go was because I couldn't let what my dad had built go. I have a different reason now. I've really evolved in my thinking. I've certainly come to see how much the business means in the community, how much it means to the employees, what a difference it's making for those employees. And I think we've got a real shot at going to third generation with my nephew. So very, very different outlook. But when I think back to that scared person going, I can't let my daddy's business go, there's still some of that there, to be totally honest.
Yeah. So for that 17-year period, because I think a lot of, parents, when they leave a business to their kids, they're thinking, hey, this is going to be great. There's going to be distributions that will go to my kids. And so this is sort of like me leaving them money instead of selling the business and literally leaving them money. I'm leaving them this cash generating thing, possibly.
Right.
And so was it a source of distributions and a little bit of income for you?
Absolutely.
And then the issues you started to see along the way, was it financial issues, I'm assuming, if it
Yes.
ended up
in yes. We started to see it going downhill financially. We could also see the facilities going downhill. There was no real plan for reinvesting for capital expenditures, and honestly, I didn't know how to advise the person we had running the company and suggest things to do differently. And they were of the mindset that their sole job was to provide those dividends to my sister and me. And so that was just a lack of knowledge on my sister's and my part. Total ignorance, not lack of intelligence, but not even knowing that we needed to go learn more. Believing that the company was set up and it would run on its own. I mean, I had people tell me, oh, it's going to be fine. It'll run. You don't have to worry about it. And so listening to that advice was not the right thing to do in hindsight.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because there are a lot of people, I think, who will try to acquire a business if it's like a very hands-off business. They're like, oh, I can be an absentee owner. This thing will run itself. But what you're saying is there has to be some level of involvement. You can't just fully trust that it's going to run itself. And we, my consulting firm, we work with a lot of companies where the owner is way too involved in the day-to-day and they're like stressed out all the time and they're kind of like hating their life. And we help them to pull back from the business and automate some things, standardize some things, put the right team in place, let go of the reins a little bit. But I don't think we've ever reached a point with any of them where they've been able to just completely let go and not be involved at all anymore. You have to be involved a little bit.
Yes, I would never recommend completely just trusting that it's going to run. At least my personal experience, that was a really bad idea, and it wasn't born out of um, wanting to walk away. It was just not knowing any differently. As an owner, I am more hands-on than a lot of people might enjoy. I enjoy working. I enjoy the challenge. My engineering background makes me love solving problems. So I've tackled a lot of problems. There's still a lot of things to tackle,
Mhm.
but honestly, my goal is to solve as many of those problems as I can, preparing for the transition for my nephew. We already recognize it's going to be a very different looking business under his leadership than mine because we
Mhm.
like to do different things.
Mhm.
So things that I like to do that he doesn't, well, we need to find somebody who will do those things. And um, we just have to work our way to figuring that out. So our plan right now is this year he's learning to do some basic stuff that's going to let me go away for a week and not touch a computer.
Nice.
So he's going to have to handle all the issues. He's going to have to process the payroll and make sure the business keeps rolling for a week. And I'm only to be called if the business is on fire.
Good for
and
you.
and then we're going to over time increase that amount of time where he has to be in charge for a couple weeks, and now he's got to make sure the bills get paid, and some other things, and probably more crises will happen that he'll have to handle, and that it'll just, until we can get to the point where I could choose to go on a couple months and be
Mhm.
gone, and if everything goes smooth, then I know he's ready, he knows he's ready, and we can decide what the final date is.
So it sounds like you learned from your dad how not to do succession planning, and you're
Yeah,
you're going about it the exact opposite way.
pretty much, pretty much. So that's not to say I'm not going to do a lot of research. I
Mhm.
still am. We have our ideas of what we think will work for the two of us, but both of us love to read and research. So we'll both come to the table with different ideas. Um, it's
Yeah.
going to be a fun challenge.
Yeah. So I want to go back to, so we got that 17-year period where it seems like as you start to deal with challenges here and there, you're probably being forced to learn a little bit about the business as you deal with each of those challenges. So that finally, when you get to that 2019 where you take over, are you fully up to speed at that point? Or you're still kind of like 20% up to speed and now starts your real deep dive?
Yeah, yeah. I
2019.
I went out and hired a general manager who'd been in fence for a long time. I felt comfortable, figuring out numbers and stuff, but I still had some people that I hired from outside, a CPA, IT consultants, things like that, to help me get through some of those sticky wickets. Because I actually didn't quit teaching right away because I
Mm.
didn't want to quit in the middle of the year. And then the next year, I thought, well, with the general manager, I can go in the evenings after I get done teaching and make this work. Well, that's the year COVID hit.
Mm.
And it seemed like the right time to choose. And I chose to go to the company full time.
Which would
And
have been the right decision because everybody invested
yeah,
a lot in their homes during that period. So you guys
yes,
probably went crazy.
you are absolutely right. We reaped the benefit from that. That really helped us come back from the doors being shut and not having any money to build on, and um, and that built up our base. We are not in any debt as a result of the COVID boom that
Mhm.
paid off for the construction industry.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, and so you sort of rode that COVID wave a little bit. What were the other things you kind of like immediately had to start doing differently, or things you had to add, or whatever to get the business where you wanted it?
So early on, we installed with subs, and then we switched to in-house crews because the company had always used in-house crews. We now have a mix. We've got some of both. so that when we're slow in the winter, we don't employ the subs. We still keep our in-house crews busy. So I was learning how to, all the budgeting stuff, financial aspects, but then I was also learning a lot about fence. So now I can stand and talk to a customer and tell them why we do the things we do and the way we do them to install fences, even though I haven't personally installed one, by querying my people, watching what they do, just really learning from everybody, asking lots of questions and learning from everybody. And we got to a point where the general manager and I had very different visions of where we wanted things to go. So he chose to find another position, and I chose to run the company myself, and hired an operations manager, and built up. I now have 4 sales reps who are also our project managers. We've really built our retail side. We are open to the public. We sell materials. It has increased dramatically due to the advertising that we've done. And so now I have a lot more full-time positions in the office to support that, and more positions out in our yard to support that. So
what percentage of your company's like revenue comes from the retail stuff versus installs that you guys are doing?
So when I started, it was probably about 20%, and now we're up to 50%. It's about 50.
Wow. Incredible. And then the other 50% that's not retail, is that all residential, or do you also have like a commercial mix in there as well?
We have a commercial mix. So the dollar amount is about equal between residential and commercial right now. Residential, of course, is great for cash flow, whereas commercial is helps in build the revenue bottom, those lines on the P&L a lot more dramatically.
Big projects.
Yeah.
What about, so your engineering background, right? Robotics, space station, has that come in handy at all? Have you like invented some sort of like, do you make your own gates that are like automated and robotic, or how has that come into play?
No, actually haven't tried to go there. I think I've used more of my analytical skills and my number sense than anything. My nephew is definitely more the hands-on designer. And, while I have a mechanical engineering degree, I don't think designing mechanisms was ever my strength. It was analyzing and coming up with the best solution out of choices of solutions and things like that. But we do have a gate shop that fabricates our own gates, and we can do all different kinds. We've got a wood shop, so we cut a lot of round rail. It's very big in this area, and we honestly don't know why, but it is. So we supply it, and then we have a stain shop, so we can pre-stain the pickets and the rails before we install them. We keep a lot of wood product and a lot of chain link product in stock for customers in the area. Okay.
Awesome. All right. So it sounds like the next big thing for you guys is this succession plan, passing it down to your nephew. And is that your sister's son?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So my husband and I didn't have children. So he was in New York, needed a job. He'd worked there before. I'm like, do you want to come work here while you figure out your long-term plan? And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I could do it for a few months. And then 5 months in, he said, Aunt Lane, can I stay? And I'm like, oh, yes. I was very excited. Nice. So, it's been, part of it's been getting to know each other, because as an adult, he was in New York. We really hadn't gotten to know each other as adults. So that's been an enjoyable experience as well.
That's great. And so what is the timeline on that succession plan, you think? It sounds like there's no rush, but for you, I'm curious, you know, obviously you will sort of phase yourself out of the business, and then
Right.
what's next for you is really what I want to know.
So I'm 62. So this should theoretically be my last big hurrah. And so I'm looking at 8 to 10 years. But we agree that it would be a good idea for us to get everything in place sooner, just in case the unexpected happens. My dad got sick in his 60s. I
Hmm.
don't want to presume anything.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I leave, I love programming, and I kind of would like to take a stab at coming up with some software that fence companies might like. There's a lot out there. I haven't been horribly impressed with any of it because I feel
Hmm.
like they don't have somebody who's a true user, really guiding them. So that could be fun. That could be the next stage.
I could have guessed somebody with your brain probably wouldn't treat retirement as a relaxation period. It would be some other project would spring up for sure.
I need to keep my brain active. That's just what I love doing. And if you the studies show if you stop keeping your brain active, that's when you're more likely, to develop dementia, and that scares me. So I'll definitely find something to keep the old noggin going.
There you go. Use it or lose it. Awesome. Well, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your background and story of Allied Fence of Tulsa. Really cool stuff. Best of luck with the succession plan, and thank you for joining me in the Lion's Den.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.